Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome again to another chapter in The Broken Blade. We're, believe it or not, getting really close to finishing this up. This is chapter 19, the chapter is called Rendezvous. A rendezvous is basically a meeting between either two individuals or two groups of people, or more. In this particular case, this is a meeting in Grand Portage between groups of fur trading people. We have the Europeans and we have the Native Americans getting together. On the European side, it's the Northwest Company, and on the Native American side, it's the Ojibwe who are getting together. Remember, Muckwa, our chief, he's an Ojibwe, and Pierre and Charbonneau, the representatives of the Northwest Company, they're the Europeans. So Pierre's still at the rendezvous. All right, so over breakfast the next morning, Charbonneau asked, "So what did you think of that dog at Muckwa's?" Pierre recalled the critter that guarded Muckwa's wigwam. It reminded him of his own dog, Pepper. "Well, he was friendly enough." Charbonneau laughed. "I don't mean the one you were petting," he said. "I'm talking about the one you ate." "Ate? What do you think was in that stew you were chunking down so fast?" Remembering the scrawny mutts he'd seen around the Indian camp, Pierre fought the nausea back. "Dog, huh?" Charbonneau nodded. "I know it's hard to get used to, but out here everything is tied to survival. You live off what the land offers. Hazelnuts, cattail root, beaver. It all fills the gut. Dog to the Indians can mean pulling a sled, carrying a pack, or meat on the table." Pierre was still trying to decide if he thought it was right to eat dog, wilderness or not, after Charbonneau had excused himself and headed for the fur pressing room. So later that morning, Pierre went for a hike on the hill behind the fort. Skirting the edge of the Indian village, he followed a deer trail that ran parallel to the lake. A short while later, he came to a clearing that offered a spectacular view of Superior. Below him, a dozen canoes were rounding Hat Point and racing for the fort. Remember in that video I asked you to watch last week, it showed where Hat Point was just a little bit around the corner from Grand Portage on Lake Superior. He was staring at the brigade pulling for the fort when a voice startled him. "You like Gitchigami?" He turned to find the pretty girl, Kenawa, holding a birch bark basket in her hand and smiling broadly. Pierre felt himself blush. "You like Gitchigami?" she repeated in a faltering French. For a moment he thought she was referring to the blueberries in her basket, but when he looked down, she shook her head and pointed toward the lake. Pierre nodded, understanding that Kenawa was using the Ojibwe word for Lake Superior. That's what the Ojibwe called Lake Superior, Gitchigami. "Yes, I do," he said. Kenawa, still smiling, asked, "You like Kenawa?" Such directness shocked Pierre. He wasn't sure what to say. "You like Kenawa?" she repeated. "Yes," he said, looking into her dark brown eyes. When the canoe race below concluded, Kenawa motioned toward a berry patch, inviting Pierre to help with the picking. They turned to walk up the ridge. He thought of offering his hand, but before he could make up his mind, she gave his hand a friendly squeeze and led him to the place where the blueberry bushes were thickest. Kenowa knelt and, working with both hands at once, began to fill her basket. Rolling her fingers through the low bushes, she filled each palm in a single graceful motion and dropped the berries into her basket. Pierre often picked berries with his mother and sister back in Lachine. They always teased him about being a better eater than a picker. When he was little, Mother sometimes threatened to limit him to a single piece of blueberry pie if he didn't fill his bucket more and his face less. So today, Pierre tried to pick as fast as Kenowa, but he ended up with only a handful of leaves. She giggled in a gentle way that made Pierre chuckle at himself. He smiled when she leaned close to him and touched his hair, saying the French word for white, blanc. He shook his head and tried to explain blonde to her. But she only laughed and pushed a huge berry between his lips. He chewed it slowly, savoring the sun-warmed sweetness. After they were through picking berries, they walked back to the village together. Though their talk was limited to simple French phrases, Pierre was surprised at how much they could say with only a gesture or a smile. Dun, dun, dun. We'll see you in the next chapter.